Hold your hand up to the screen for a second. Look at your skin, its exact shade, every freckle, every tan line. Now, drop yourself 60,000 years into the past. Same body, same hand. But you're standing on an open African savanna at sunset. The air still hot. Insects buzz around your ears. The sun isn't soft and golden. It's a brutal, all-day spotlight that has been hammering this land for months. You lift your hand again. In this world, it's much darker, packed with melanin, the pigment that works like built-in sunscreen. Out here, that deep color isn't decoration. It's survival.
Back on that savanna, your ancestors' skin isn't just dark. It's doing chemistry. Under that hot sun, tiny cells in the bottom layer of the skin are busy. They're called melanocytes, pigment factories parked between your other skin cells. Each one stretches out little arms, handing packets of color up to its neighbors. Those packets are melanin, not paint, more like microscopic sunglasses. There are mostly two main kinds, eumelanin, which looks brown to almost black, and pheomelanin, which looks more yellow to reddish. Your overall skin tone is mostly about how much eumelanin your melanocytes make, how big those packets are, and how far they spread through the upper layers of skin. More packets, more spreading, more eumelanin, darker skin. Fewer packets, less spreading, or more pheomelanin, lighter or easily burned skin. Picture sunlight hitting the skin. The part that matters most is ultraviolet radiation, UV for short. Two main types reach us. UVB, which has enough energy to start vitamin D production in your skin, and UVA, which dives deeper, damaging DNA and other molecules. Melanin sits in front of your cell's nuclei like tiny umbrellas. It soaks up and scatters UV before it can smash into DNA or break apart important vitamins in your blood. So why doesn't everyone just max out the melanin slider and call it a day? Because UV isn't only bad. Your skin uses UVB to kick off the reaction that makes vitamin D, which you need for strong bones and a healthy immune system. Here's the trade-off. In places with really intense UV, like equatorial Africa, the danger is too much UV. Deeply pigmented skin cuts down the damage, but still lets enough UVB through to make vitamin D, because there is so much sunlight. Far from the equator, the math flips. The sun angle is low, winters are long, and UVB is weaker. Now, heavy melanin is almost too good at its job. It blocks so much UVB that vitamin D becomes hard to make. At the same time, a B vitamin in your blood called folate is at risk. Folate is key for building DNA in fast-growing cells, especially in embryos and sperm. Strong UV can break folate down. So evolution is juggling two things. Protect folate and DNA from too much UV and let enough UVB through to keep vitamin D levels up when sunlight is scarce. This balance is what many researchers call the UV vitamin D folate trade-off. Anthropologist Nina Jablinson has spent decades studying how skin color maps onto sunlight around the world. In simple terms, different skin tones are different solutions to the same physics problem. Here's the twist most people miss.
The pigment factories themselves are almost the same in everyone.
Those pigment factories may be similar in everyone, but the instructions they follow are not. To see that in action, jump with me to a cold cave in northern Spain about 7,000 years ago. A group of hunters shelters by a fire. Deer hides hang to dry. Outside, fir trees drip with rain. Inside, one young man lies still on the cave floor. He died long ago. Today, scientists call his skeleton La Braña 1. When his skull was found in 2006 in the mountains of León, it looked like any other Mesolithic hunter. Stone tools nearby, animal bones, a quiet life interrupted. The real surprise came later in a clean lab when researchers pulled DNA out of one of his teeth. That ancient DNA let them peek at some of his pigment genes, and the result did not match the picture most people have of ancient Europeans. Slight emphasis, gently challenging. Genetic markers linked to blue eyes, present, a bit surprised. Variants linked to lighter skin that dominate Europe today, largely missing. pointed, slightly emphatic. Put that together with what we know about how those variants work, and you get a strange image, at least to modernize. A man walking through Ice Age forests with bright eyes in a much darker face. Not a rare oddball, reassuring. Other early hunter-gatherer remains from places like Luxembourg and Sweden tell the same story. Light eyes were already in the mix, while the most common light skin versions were still rare or absent. Explaining, steady. Here's the point. Signposting, deliberate. For most of the last 40,000 years, the people living in Europe were probably not as pale as many people there are now. Clarifying, lightly challenging assumptions. On an evolutionary clock, the spread of very light skin in that region is a recent shift, not an ancient baseline. Conclusive, calm. So, if Europe wasn't full of very pale people for most of its history, where did that kind of lighter skin come from in the first place? Here's where the story usually takes a wrong turn. People imagine one moment, one place, some ancient light skin mutation appears, spreads out from Europe, and paints half the world. Simple and wrong. Let's go back to that pigment instruction manual you saw in Europe. One of the page edits that helps skin get lighter there also shows up when you look east into the ancient Near East and South Asia. Farmers living in what's now the Middle East and later communities in the Indus and Ganges regions carried their own versions of this change. Picture an early farming village in northern India around 5,000 years ago. Mud walls, grain stored in pots. People spend long days outside, but the sun angle and seasons are not the same as on the equator. Over generations, small tweaks that let in a bit more UV start to matter. Kids with slightly lighter skin make vitamin D a bit easier when diets are cereal heavy and winters are hazy. Those kids do better. Slowly, that variant becomes common. Now jump northeast into ancient China and Korea. Winters are cold. Summers can be bright but often hazy. When geneticists look at people here, they also see lighter skin on average. But when they open the genome, the Europe plus South Asia solution isn't the only star of the show. Other chapters in the manual have been edited instead. Some changes nudge how strongly pigment-making genes are switched on in the skin. Others adjust how pigment is packed and moved around inside cells. The end result to your eye? A slight lighter tone that can burn more easily than deep equatorial skin. On the molecular level, though, it's a different route to a similar outcome. Here's the twist of evolution. Similar sunlight problems popped up in different parts of the Old World. Populations in those places didn't borrow one global fix. They kept stumbling on their own. Slowly and inevitably. That's called convergent evolution, separate groups taking separate paths to the same general destination. Pause on that for a second. Light skin in Northern Europe, light skin in parts of West Asia and India, light skin in East Asia. Not one ancient event echoing everywhere, but several local experiments solving a shared physics puzzle. Skin color isn't a single story radiating out from one homeland. It's a set of rhymes written on different continents.
Skin color isn't one story radiating out from a single place. It's dozens of local experiments. To see that, pull back to a world map covered in colored dots. Each dot is a real genome from past or present people. When Nina Jablonski and George Chaplin compared these dots to satellite data in sunlight in 2010, a pattern jumped out. Near the equator, deep tones track brutal UV like a heat map. Move toward the poles, and on average, tones soften wherever clouds, seasons, or low sun cut UVB. But here's the thing, that gradient hides a lot of creative solutions. A 2017 project in Science led by Sarah Tishk scanned skin tone genes in people from Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Botswana. They found versions that darken and versions that lighten, sometimes sitting in the same village. One continent, huge diversity. Skin color isn't a line. It's a toolkit.
So zoom back to that savanna at sunset. Your hand and your ancestor's hand side by side. Not the same shade, but solving the same sunlight problem. Here's the strange part. Most of the differences we fight over today emerged in the last 50,000 years or so
A blink compared to the roughly 300,000 years our species has been around. They're driven by tweaks in a small set of genes, not by deep splits into separate kinds of humans. Under different skies, we edited the same basic body. So what if, instead of asking what skin color someone has, we asked what journey their ancestors took through the sun?